short video giving you information on the Religious Studies A-Level, Edexcel general advice and revision tips. In this video I'm going to cover the following. The first is that I'll be talking about both the AS and the A-Level, occasionally together and occasionally separately. Then I'll be talking about some general examination guidance, before providing you with a couple of ideas on revision techniques. I will try to keep the whole thing brief, but I hope that it's really useful to you moving forwards. The A-Level then has 3 papers, each of them are 2 hours in length, and within each paper there are 3 sections. There's section A, which has an 8-mark question and a 12-mark question, section B which has a 10 and a 20, and section C which has the extended 30-mark question. Section B is the area of the examination that deals directly with the extract, and you'll need to have read, annotated and understood the anthology in detail in order to be successful in that area. The AS examination, however, is still 3 papers, but they're 1 hour each with only 2 sections on each paper, and section A has an 8-mark and 2 9-marks, and section B has an 8-mark question, and the extended question this time is 20 marks. And we will get into, on later videos, the difference between the AO1 and AO2 in these papers. Here I'm going to give you some brief general tips to help you across either examination, the AS or the A2. The first one is arguably the most simple and the most important, and that is to answer the question and actually use the question wording. Now, it says on the front of the exam paper to check your answers if you have time at the end. I would rather that you, you can do that, but when you check your answer, the thing you should be checking is whether or not you've directed enough of your material exactly with a laser sight back at the question that you've actually been asked. So when you are just about to start each question, just take half a breath and check that you are definitely answering the particular question. The next bit of advice is to use the question wording, and when we say this we mean the exact question wording, and often you would do that at the start and the end of your answer, even for a short question. So if it's a short question for 8 marks, for example, assess the key ideas, then you would say the key ideas of in the start and key ideas again to finish. The second top tip is to revise key scholars, and when you refer to them in your essay, most of the time you can just refer to them by their last name, and that will do. Next, if your answer goes over the available space required, then use extra paper. If you use extra paper, then your work will be required to be marked by a chief examiner, which we hope will lead to a higher degree of accuracy, which for our answers we hope will lead to better results for everybody. So remember to use extra paper if needed. Do not simply attach your answer around the side in the available space around the edges or underneath an answer, because when it's copied to the examiner it may not actually be fully sent off and you may lose marks for doing so. Look here, I've actually taken from the exemplar an example of a student that has done that, and if you look you'll see that they have added all of this writing underneath their answer, and it would be better to have used a separate sheet, so make sure you do that. And the last one, I've been trying to practice what I preach here. I've been told that it is good style to underline some of your key points and ideas in your answer to accentuate to the examiner that you think you've done something that is point scoring. So I'll try and show you some examples of where that is done reasonably well. So again, taken from the exemplar, if we have a look at this example answer, you can see that some of the words are leaping out at you where they've underlined, but religious experience is often private. Now I think this is an example of where they're making an argument, so it makes their argument sound accentuated to say, but because religious experience is often private, it sort of gives emphasis to their opinion. Another one, therefore we cannot know the outcome, etc. So this is a good example of a reasonable attempt to underline some of the key ideas, and I recommend that you take that forward. Lastly, I wanted to say that quotations are important and can add a lot to your answer. They can add a lot of certainty, for example, but don't feel the need to revise really long quotations. In fact, the best quotations will be quite short and will be used by you throughout your answer, where it actually requires you to do the explaining. So an example might be is, instead of remembering all of Kant's quotations about his deontology, you might say, Kant says, goodwill shines forth like a precious jewel. You could simply quote the words precious jewel. Kant likens the will to a precious jewel. By this he meant. So actually, if you have a shorter quotation, it means you do the explaining, and it's much more interesting for the examiner, and it proves what you know rather than what Kant or some other scholar knew. So quotations can be short, and by that I'll be really specific. I mean, it can be 2 or 3 words, as long as you have then applied that to your answer and explained the relationship between what you're saying and the quotation back to the question. More general advice: you must look at this resource, which tells you how long to spend per question. As you can see, it roughly equates to a mark a minute. You can pause this video now if you need to look more closely at any of these. You can see that you should work very, very quickly through the early questions, as this will help you to get enough time for the final question, particularly if you're doing the A-level, where you need to try to spare up 40 minutes for the evaluation question. I would question whether you will get 5 full minutes at the end to check. It's difficult to know what would score you more marks, having 5 minutes at the end to check or writing the entire time. I would favour writing the entire time and having been well practiced enough that you don't make a mistake on the type of questions and the style of your answer. So I think you should, when you receive your question, you should closely look at it, perhaps underline the trigger words. Like I say, take a breath, just check, think through, are you answering the question as best you can, and then write with full confidence and write the entire time. And you might be you have just 1 minute at the end to check through your answer. Lastly, and very quickly, onto some general revision tips. Now, we provide lots of these, and I'm sure you know many, but I just want to give you some of my main ones. First thing I recommend you make many for separate topics and for separate scholars, divided up into a way that is useful to you. I recommend making revision cards. They should be detailed but separated into key features, and I recommend having 2 sides. One side for AO1 and then another side for AO2. So on one side you will have features explained with keywords and occasional quotations, and on the alternative side you will have evaluations of the ideas presented on the first side. That could be a criticism from another scholar, it could be an outline of the strengths and an outline of the weaknesses, and a conclusion with your point of view. But revision cards are definitely an excellent place to start in terms of organising your material. The next thing that I recommend is that you complete practice questions, looking at all available exemplar papers and any questions we've been given, as well as questions that we create ourselves. You must complete many practice questions and make detailed planning notes, and I recommend the first time around you do it using your notes, and then we move on to the most legitimate form of revision, is to then complete practice questions without using your notes. Now, the way this should work is that you should complete detailed planning using your notes, then attempt an answer without any notes. There you will get an honest representation of what you can remember, and all examinations test what you can remember, not just what you know, and there is a difference. And then you can turn back to your detailed plan and say to yourself, what did I miss? What was missing here? And build it back up from that position. Then you revise from the new improved version, and then you try again. And you should repeat these steps. The more times you do it, the better you will do in the final exam. I'm sure that correlates. You must build in enough time to have practiced every question with notes and without several times. And lastly, good luck, and I'll be uploading more videos now which will deal directly with each question on the paper one at a time.